Social Welfare, SUNY Albany in the United States. She visited us for and stayed with us for quite long in 2019 as a visiting scholar, visiting Fulbright under Fulbright specialist program. And she just recently received the award for the international work and commitment to promote social work across the globe from National Association of Social Worker in United States. So I think this really, this achievement, she deserved this achievement because I think she has worked quite thoroughly with Indonesia, especially in promoting the professionalization of social work. So we are very happy, we are very honored, and very, very glad to have her. And Mary, thank you so much again for your availability to share your knowledge and experience with us and our students, as well as our lecturers here at UNPAD are very excited to listen to your presentation. I hope our student will use this opportunity to really have some discussion with Mary about the topic that is discussed. I think the topic is very important. And to all of you, enjoy the presentation. And I hope this will be very engaging for the discussion between students and the presenters, as well as with the lecturers. So enjoy the presentation. And again, thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ibu Titi. And now we go to a short bio reading. I will read Ibu Mary's short bio. She is a faculty member at the University at Albany School of Social Welfare. She is the co-principal investigator for the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute, a service of the Children's Bureau, and the director of the New York State Social Work Education Consortium. Ibu Mary has worked in the child welfare field for 14 years, both before and after receiving her MSW from the University at Albany in 1982. She joined the faculty at the University at Albany in 1987, working in field education and chairing both the MSW and the BSW programs. She teaches in the practice and human behavior sequences. And over the past 20 years, Ibu Mary has been fortunate to lead 2 workforce initiatives focused on child welfare for New York States and nationally. The Social Work Education Consortium is designed to impact the New York State's workforce through tuition assistance for employees completing a social work degree. In 2019, she received funding, as what Bu Titi have said. She received funding from the Fulbright Specialist Program to spend 6 weeks in Indonesia and collaborating with us, working also with Ibu Dr. Binahiti Rusidi and the social work faculty from UNPAD. Her work has focused on workforce development, organizational leadership, and social work curriculum development in the US and internationally. So it's proof that Ibu Mary is very experienced in her field, and she also focusing herself on the child welfare social work practice, and we can learn a lot from there. So I hope this is a good opportunity for all the students, especially if you are interested in child welfare. It's also an opportunity to discuss with Ibu Mary about your interest. I think that's for the CV from Ibu Mary. Next, we will go to presentation. Ibu Mary, you may present your own presentation. The screen and time is yours. And we're also live streaming this session through YouTube. So everyone can have access to this today's class. Thank you, Ibu Mary, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome, Ibu Titi and Ibu Leah. It's really a delight for me to be with all the students again from UNPAD. I had such a wonderful time when I was there in 2019. So it's really my pleasure to be back again. I just want to check in. Can people hear me okay? Leah, is the sound okay? Yes, I see you nodding. So, all right. If it's not, please would someone just give me a signal and I'll try to speak closer to the microphone. So I want to share my screen and just say that tonight I've been asked to talk with you, or today, it's morning where you are, I've been asked to speak about international social work in the United States. And so I'm going to try to give you an overview of the profession in the United States. I thought I'd talk about core values that guide social work. What are some of the historical influences on our profession? What are the pathways to practice? And is practice driven by policy, or is it driven by individual need? I also want to share our national framework for the profession, some international perspectives, and then end by talking about the future of the profession. So just to get started, could you help me out to set the context for this and share with me what do students here think are the core values guiding Indonesia for Indonesian society? And I know it's hard to maybe share in a large group, but if people could put some things in the chat, and maybe Leah, you could read those out to me because I can't see the chat while my PowerPoint is up. So what are the core values guiding Indonesian society?
Ayo, silakan mahasiswa untuk menjawab.
May I try to answer?
Please.
Okay, first, let me introduce myself. My name is Keisha, and the core values of Indonesian society, I think it's Muslim oriented, most of the time. We have a lot of mosque here and everything, and most of people here are Muslims. And then second, there's still a lot of places where it's conservative. So even though even though the society is very diverse, it still has a lot of Muslim core. So there's a lot of policies or anything from the government that still centers around Muslims. And then second, it's very diverse from the culture, and a lot of people here has a lot of different cultures that they follow through their generations. The language are also vary here. So even though I'm from Bekasi, and when I'm here in Jatinangor, where the Universitas Padjadjaran is, I have to, get to know the new languages that the local people here use. So they also vary in that. And yeah, I think it's just Indonesian society is just very diverse, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keisha. Any other thoughts to add to that? So when I hear the words Muslim oriented, what does that mean to you?
I think, I mean, I think it's mostly where the policies or the the cultural thing in between the people that lives here are most of the time are pretty centered into the religion, where the maybe what should I say? Some of the where people interact with each other or anything, they usually use the religion, when you want to do something or anything, people usually centers around the religion rules. And most of this were Muslim because we most of Indonesian are very I think we are very centered around religion. And when people I think sorry, I'm a bit confused how to say it in English, but it's basically like when we see how the people interact here are mostly centered around how the rules are in the religion, and mostly it's in and mostly are Muslims. That's that's the best that I can say. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's, yeah. Other thoughts to add to that? So based in the religion, religion is very important, and the Muslim identity, it's very important as well, that religion and identity, who we are and what we believe, are very intertwined.
Silakan yang lain.
There's a concept I heard about Indonesia, unity in diversity, that when your country was really being formed as a modern democracy and moving out of being overruled by a European country, and because of the diversity, that this notion of unity and diversity became kind of a core value for the country. Have any of you heard that term? Unity through diversity?
Bhinneka Tunggal Ika ya. Pernah
Oh,
dengar ya?
yes, that's it.
Yes, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika pernah dengar ya teman-teman ya?
So I think building on what your Keisha shared is a belief in God, the unity of Indonesia. Yes, please. Go ahead, the person who's raised their hand. I'm sorry.
Silakan Mia, ni Putu Mehak Mia, silakan.
Hello, before I get into my point, let me introduce myself. My name is Mia, and I'm studying social welfare Unpad, but I'm currently actually in Boston for an exchange program. So yeah, I think the point that I want to point out, since I'm currently in the US, and like the difference that I can see and I can compare between Indonesia and the US is probably the cultural values. And probably like, yeah, I think between Indonesia and the US, in the US, there is like a very greater emphasis on individualism and personal freedom. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, there is a stronger sense of collectivism and group harmony. And that's very different, like if you compare it from the US and the Indonesia. And I also see like, just like what Keisha has pointed out, the United States, I think is very religiously diverse, with Christianity being the most dominant faith. But in Indonesia, it's predominantly Muslim. So it's also like one of the thing that probably stands out between Indonesia and the US. And yeah, I think that's all for me for now.
That's excellent. Yes, thank you so much. That's a really good summary of some of the key differences. Let me just give people a minute in case anyone else wanted to add anything else to that.
Teman-teman yang nggak pede pakai bahasa Inggris, boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia ya. Kita akan coba translate nanti. I'm inviting those who cannot speak in English to also to respond to your discussion, and we'll provide translations for you. Silakan teman-teman yang mau pakai bahasa Indonesia boleh. Ada lagi? Core values-nya? Tadi Bu Mary bicara tentang Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Gimana menurut kalian? Yang bisa open cam boleh ya. Terima kasih yang bisa open cam. Ayo, ada lagi yang mau merespon?
That's fine. I can move on. I'm going to ask you
Okay.
more questions, though, so get ready. And I appreciate the contributions that were made. And also feel free to put things in the chat. And even if writing in English isn't easy for you, I'm going to ask my colleague Leah to help so that we can get your questions too. So I think what we've heard from the two students is really very important to think about, is this idea of collectivism and group harmony, part of the unity of Indonesia, kind of the inner wisdom that comes from having a society where the majority of citizens have one religious faith and one belief system. But also, and I think I've learned this from Titi and other colleagues in Indonesia, is the importance of social justice as a huge underpinning for Muslims. That you really, it's part of our duty as being a Muslim and being in community with other Muslims to share and create opportunities for justice among all. So sharing food, sharing resources, sharing community with each other are, I think, very important core values. And I just want you to think about these in the context of social work practice. So social work is a value-driven profession. So how do the core values of the society or country or community that we live in drive the work that we do? So I want to turn now to the core values of the United States. So in the United States, we are what I would call a utilitarian-oriented country. And what does that mean? Utilitarianism is a philosophical orientation that believes that a society must always look at the greatest good for the greatest number. That you can sacrifice some people if the result of that sacrifice is that the majority of people receive some benefit. And we also have always had this, as part of our Christian orientation, what they call manifest destiny, that if we're the winners of a war, or if we dominate another country, or if we take over another tribe or region, and we're the victors in that, it's because God is saying we're doing the right thing. So manifest destiny is like we think God is guiding our hand. And I think for white people who have been very taking over huge swaths of the world, part of the underpinning of their belief that they were supposed to be doing this is that they thought that this was being driven by God. There's also a tension in the United States between individual rights and community rights. Even though we have a federal government and 50 states and 2 territories, states have more power than the federal government. And that was written into our Constitution and was very important with the forming of our country. We probably wouldn't have the United States of America if there hadn't been agreements that states maintained a lot of individual power. And I think that's different in Indonesia, where your regions and your islands have agreed to become part of a federal coalition. But in the United States, New York or Pennsylvania, we all have different laws across the country. We all control a lot of what happens within the borders of our own state. And even the Supreme Court has ruled when the federal government tries to overstep its authority, states will sue the federal government, and the Supreme Court has really upheld the superiority of states' rights in many, many instances. And that also is reflected in our more individualistic orientation. We're very independent. We really think government and other people should stay out of our business, and we're much less community oriented. So there's a big tension between the rights of the individual and the rights of the community. And I think we see this. We tried during the COVID to provide an allowance for poor children and families. And what we saw was a tremendous reduction in poverty for children during COVID with these monthly allowances. And we tried, our president and the Senate, we tried to make that permanent, but there were still even Democratic senators and House members who thought that was giving too much away. That even though we're an incredibly rich country, providing a monthly benefit for poor mothers and poor children was something that our country wasn't willing to do, even though we know it makes a big difference. So our core values of utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number, our beliefs about manifest destiny, and the tension between individual rights and community rights has really driven our policy and our practice. So I just want to talk a little about how the profession started in this country, because this is important as well. So the first schools of social work really started to emerge in the late 1800s. So as a profession, we're very old in this country. The first school of social work was at Columbia University in 1904, and Simmons College in Boston collaborated with Harvard to establish the Boston School for Social Workers. By 1908, there was a program in Chicago at the University of Chicago School of Social Service Administration. So the profession as a formal profession has been around for a long time. This was a time in our country of great social reform, and really 2 main approaches to social work emerged at that time, what we call case-based practice with individuals, or settlement housework or community-oriented practice. And 2 main authors guided that. Jane Addams was in the settlement house area, and Mary Richmond wrote Social Casework Practice. We were also in huge competition with medicine to be a real profession. And in 1917, Abraham Flexner declared that social work wasn't a real profession because we weren't like medicine. And so ever since then, we've been fighting to claim our place as a true profession. In 1912, the federal government formed the Children's Bureau to address the needs of children and families. And since that point in time, the federal government, through the Children's Bureau, has really promoted the hiring of social workers. Our profession started to develop very quickly after World War I because they needed people to help support soldiers who were coming back from the war with what we called shell shock. And do people know what that is called today? Anybody know what, when soldiers come back from war and they're traumatized? I'll put it in the chat for people so you can see it. And then I'll also say it. Yes, PTSD. That's exactly right. PTSD, perhaps. So our understanding of that has really evolved, and social workers have been a very important part of the evolution of that. Soon after World War I, the Great Depression followed in our country, and World War II was quick on its heels, and social work programs were developing all over the country to help all the people who were facing starvation during the Depression. Most of the work was focused on casework or mental health practice, and this individual work was really a way for social work to prove that we were a profession. Also, schools of social work began to develop specific methods for working with individuals and families that included research. So along with the first schools of social work, we had the development of NASW, our National Social Work Association, and the Council on Social Work Education. In 1917, all the schools of social work that were currently in existence at that time came together, and that became the Council on Social Work Education that eventually created national standards for social work curriculum. So our practice was really influenced by our core values. So how did that happen? At that time of the founding of the profession, professionally trained people were usually white Christians who went out to help people who were poor or impacted by health or mental health problems. At that time, we had very little research, and we knew very little about what caused mental illness or alcohol and substance abuse. We had very limited ways to intervene with families experiencing these challenges, and we often tended to blame the problems on the person or the family. One powerful example for me, because this changed while I was a graduate student, we used to think that schizophrenia or a mental illness was caused by bad mothering. And what we know now is that it's a neurological problem. It's a biochemical imbalance in the person. You could be the best mother in the world, but if your child or adolescent has this chemical imbalance, schizophrenia is what is the symptom that we see caused by that biochemical imbalance. So I think our research, and many social workers are really powerful researchers, our research has helped us understand the practice. So while our core values were focused on the dignity and worth of the individual, and that the person is nested in this community of people, our practice often was socially influenced by things that were seen as social problems or problems of immoral character or poor mothering or weak character that I think we now know are often socially created or caused. So I think what I saw when I was in Indonesia was how much your practice is guided by the participants, by the members of your community. The research that I read from your faculty and the conversations that I had with faculty, you were going out into the community and working with the members of that community around solutions, as opposed to coming in and telling people what the solution is. What I saw was that practice in Indonesia was really influenced by that core value of shared caring for each other as, and that because we were part of a community, our voice mattered in finding solutions. Jane Addams was very interested in that kind of social work practice in the 20th century. She was very active in labor unions, being elected to public office, and making laws and policies that reflected social work values. But the majority of social workers wanted to help people with individual change because, like doctors, they saw that work as being more valuable, as having higher status. So these two approaches still guide social work today. And we call them micro practice, that's practice with individuals and families, small groups, and macro practice, which is practice with communities and larger systems. So I have a question for you. If you were building the social work profession today in Indonesia like you are, should practice drive policy or should policy drive practice? What do people think?
Ayo, gimana menurut kalian? Silahkan raise hand. Atau boleh langsung jawab. Praktek diatur oleh kebijakan atau kebijakan diatur oleh praktek? Ayo, sepi begini. Pada kemana nih teman-teman?
Can I try to answer again?
Okay.
I think practice it's more efficient when it's driven by policy. So it's when you try to do the practice, it's not too wide, as if like it's more clear the where the target should be and what's the goal is, and it's not going anywhere because there's the policy in it, and it sets where should stop and where should start. And I think it's easier for both parties, for the social worker and also the communities that we try to reach. So I think it's more efficient if practice is driven by the policy.
Great, thank you so much.
Bulan mungkin mau bantu jawab, Bulan? Hadir Bulan?
I appreciate it. It's very hard to talk on Zoom with so many people. So I just want to suggest that that along with oh yes, great, go ahead.
Okay, maybe I want to add something after what Keisha said. I think I also think that it's better for policy drive practice, because by having a policy-driven practice, it often provides legal protections for both social workers and clients, and like it can help shield social workers from liability and protect clients' right. But I think that policy-driven practice isn't always the better option, because like I feel like effective social work also it's often a combination of both, so that effective social work requires a feedback loop where practice informs policy and policy in return shapes and guides practice. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
I like that.
We have chat from Ismail Ilham in the chat room. Can you,
Both ways.
can you read it?
I can, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It goes both ways, that a practice had to be intertwined with the way policies are stated, but also from our practice, we could see small details that are unnoticeable by big stakeholders. So we could advocate for the people's voices to the governance. Yeah, that's great. I think, Niputu, that's what you were saying as well, that it needs to be bidirectional. It needs to be in both directions. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Ada lagi yang punya pendapat? Silahkan. Kuliah atau siapa? Gisela?
Oh, sorry. Did anyone else?
Arifah mungkin?
Okay, maybe I want to answer based on my opinion. I actually quite agree with the previous speakers about their opinion. And in my opinion, it's better if the policy drive this, because if we have the policy about how we should conduct the practice, we can have some kind of guideline on how we do the practice for our clients. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so it provides guidelines. That's great. That can help you know how to carry out the practice. Yeah, so it sounds like we need both, right? We need the policy to guide the practice because it provides the guidelines. But then the point is, as we do the practice, then following the policy, do we need a way to feed that back? Maybe it's not working quite the way it was intended. Often policy has unintended consequences, but now you're in the field and you're seeing those. So is there a way to modify the policy or change it slightly to make it better and more effective? I have a feeling your students, Ibu Leah, are going to be really great policy practitioner advocates.
Maybe about the social policy is one subject.
And he's here as well. So he must be very proud to hear that.
So just to keep us moving forward, we have a national framework for social work practice in our country. Even though we are strong on states' rights, we have two national groups that provide a lot of guidance and direction. One is the Council on Social Work Education, which accredits all schools of social work. They have an educational policy and accreditation standards, which are revised every 7 years. These are developed by the Commission on Educational Policy, which is a large group of faculty from all over the country that, and there's hearings and public hearings about the new accreditation standards. These accreditation guidelines drive the content of curriculum, and it really pushes the schools to prepare graduates for contemporary practice. I can assure you, our faculty, without that change every 7 years, would keep teaching the same thing for 100 years. So we also have the National Association of Social Workers, and they developed the Code of Ethics. The first Code of Ethics was developed in our country in 1960. these standards. So they're now, what, 63 years old. They're based on values, principles, and standards, and they really guide the profession. So they lay out the unique purpose of social work, which is service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. And these really help provide guidance when we encounter ethical dilemmas. Just one example of an ethical dilemma that's come up recently is virtual therapy. So if we're going to use Zoom or other technology products, so to do therapy with people, what's our security for those? How confidential is a Zoom meeting? Not very confidential at all. Do we have to have protections for clients that interact with a therapist online? What if I live in New York and my client lives in Oklahoma and there's different laws ruling social work across those states? Do I need to be licensed in every state I practice in? So there are huge ethical considerations for how technology can be a support to our work as social workers, but it could also jeopardize clients and their right to service, dignity, and worth, and social justice. We also have national licensing, and I know Indonesia has passed a licensing law. Congratulations. I know you're working very hard to prepare practitioners for licensing. You've done it more effectively than the United States has because you have one law for the whole country. We have 50 different laws in the United States. And depending on where you practice, you have to abide by those laws, which means you could, if you wanted to practice in more than one state, pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to be licensed in multiple states. Licensure drives funding streams for practice. Only licensed practitioners can receive insurance reimbursement, and each state crafts the laws and sets the criteria for licensure. So how does social work practice in the United States compare to international practice? So it's been the International Federation of Social Workers that has driven the code of ethics for international practice. And one of the things that I love about how IFSW developed this code of ethics is that they took a step back. And instead of just adopting the Western view of ethics, they really said international social work reflects an array of values and ethical principles that are country specific, that inform us as social workers. And so based on that, they tried to establish what they called a global definition of social work, which is layered and encourages regional and national amplification. So you, Indonesia, would take a look at these, at the global definition and then also the ethics and decide which of these are most relevant for practice in Indonesia. So some of them that the International Federation has talked about is the dignity of humanity, promoting human rights, social justice, self-determination, the right to participation, respect for confidentiality and privacy, treating people as whole persons, the ethical use of technology and social media, and professional integrity. So I know you have an social work association, an Indonesian social work association, and also a social work education association, and also your new licensing law. So I know all of those would have included in them codes of ethics for the practice in Indonesia. And I think it's hugely important, because it's only with that kind of clearly defined ethical principles that we can really protect clients who may be very vulnerable. And we want to make sure that as a profession, we really are treating the neediest with the utmost care and consideration. One thing I'm very proud of about our profession is that, you know, I know this for New York State. I don't know it for other states, but I'm guessing it's pretty similar, since New York has the largest group of social workers in the country practicing within our state, is that we have a very, very low rate of clients reporting us for abusive practice or malpractice. Much, much lower than doctors and nurses and other human service professionals. So I think social workers as a whole, as a profession, we come into this because we really believe in this work, in this profession. And I think our commitment to being ethical shines through in that data. So I just want to talk for a minute about the future of the profession. Our job really as educators and social work practitioners and supervisors for field placements is not to prepare students for something. Our job is to help students prepare themselves for anything, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. But I can tell from the conversation that we've had that you are already doing that kind of deep thinking about what is the future of our profession. Is it policy to practice or practice to policy? What are the core values of Indonesia that are guiding our work? So let me tell you a little bit about what the future of the profession looks like in the United States. And then I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are about the future of the profession in Indonesia. In the United States, our workforce is shrinking dramatically. We have a shrinking population. We're at zero replacement rate for our population, and we're also not letting new immigrants into our country. So we're actually shrinking as a country. The future is going to have much greater use of technology. We're also doing something that Indonesia already does so well. We're really calling upon our families and communities to be active partners with us in guiding services and in shaping what the services will look like. So community-driven practice, consumer-driven practice. That said, we also have to weather the current disarray in our government and stand up for the rights of people who are being oppressed, such as people who are immigrants, transgender or non-binary, gay and lesbian, and African American communities. We are really challenged to overcome poverty in our country, which is so wealthy. The distribution of wealth and access to resources is incredibly unequal. And we still struggle to really do very simple things that other countries have found to be extremely effective in supporting equal access to resources, education, and services. So how are American social workers handling this? We're really doing a lot of changes to our curriculum requirements for social work programs. So trying to integrate macro practice and micro practice so that the consumer voice gets raised. We have national legislation that we're currently promoting to recognize the work that social workers do other than face-to-face work with clients for reimbursement, such as service coordination. We also have national advocacy to support voting rights and human rights for immigrants and other oppressed groups. And we're trying to use research in a really interesting way to prove that when you have a service, if a social worker is involved, people get better faster and they don't come back into services. And this is happening mostly in healthcare, where we actually now have evidence that when a social worker is on an interdisciplinary healthcare team, people leave the hospital faster and don't return. They have better health outcomes when social workers are involved in the team than teams that do not have a social worker. So that's hugely important, I think, to proving both the relevance and the need for social work within our country and for serving all kinds of people. So I just have a question for you. You are all young professionals. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. And then I want to share some pictures with you. But you are all young professionals getting ready to go into the field. So how are you influencing your professors? How are you influencing the way teaching is happening and the way practice is happening in your communities? Feel free to use the chat if speaking is in front of this large group is intimidating.
Ayo, gimana kalian mempengaruhi kami? Boleh ya, silahkan berpendapat. Maybe the question is too difficult. Boleh ini bebas ya.
We'd never argue back with our professors.
Yes, exactly. Professors are the God. They may not make mistakes.
All right, well, I'll give you that. You don't have to argue back with your professors. But how do you imagine changing the field? What's your dream for social work in Indonesia?
Okay, I'm sorry if it's me again, but I will try to answer about the question before about how we influence our lectures or vice versa. I think it's mostly where we exchange our opinions on things. Sometimes our lecturer asks about certain things, and then we tell ourselves our opinion about the issues or anything. Sometimes I do argue when our lecturer tells their views about the issues, because I do have my view on the issues too. But most of the time, I think our lecturers are giving what I need. So it's most them influencing me. And about your second question about the dream, I think I want the social work to be more reachable for the LGBTQ community in Indonesia. I know it's a bit hard here since, like I said before, we are in we're in a country where most of it are still conservative. So having a social worker that focuses on LGBTQ community is a bit hard, but it's not bad to have a dream, right? I think. And also recently we have a small problem here where the government are giving an access to disabilities and it doesn't turn out really good. People are exchanging opinions on internet and even like try to see that the help is not that effective. And I think it's also one of the biggest concern for me now, that disabilities are not as big concern like how is in the US, where even like I see on the internet, disabilities in US are very, what should I say? You can see the information, the access more wide there rather than in Indonesia. So I want to, I hope that it can be improved too. That's from me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think I would like to add something from the second question and what I hope for the social work in Indonesia. Just like Keisha, I think that encouraging a more liberal approach among social workers in Indonesia could lead to some positive outcomes. By what I meant by more liberal, I mean fostering a mindset that values individual freedoms, personal choices, and the open-mindedness without actually forgetting about our Indonesian roots and our Indonesian roots. This approach, I think, could involve by promoting inclusivity, respecting diverse beliefs and lifestyles, and also advocating for policies that prioritize human rights and social justice. And I think it's important to emphasize that a more liberal approach should aim to strike a balance between tradition and modernity, respecting Indonesia's cultural diversity well, but we're also like safeguarding individual liberties and human rights.
Yeah, that's so well put. As finding that balance really between the strengths of your country, of the traditions and culture of your country, but also the rights of the people that live there. Thank you. Other thoughts about your dream for social work? Yeah, go ahead, Akira.
Okay, thank you. Is my voice come out?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I want to start my hope to social worker, especially to in Indonesia, is I hope in the future will be more facility for disability, especially on in the school, because in Indonesia is a lot of kids who can join the school because the school doesn't have a facility for disability. Just like example, like for the deaf people, or maybe who wear a wheelchair. Even in hospital, it's also maybe there's a little there's a little hospital who had a facility for disability. So I hope maybe social worker in Indonesia will help society, will help the society, and and the people will help the people in the future to make the facility for disability. I'm sorry for my sentence. Thank you.
No, that was beautiful. It was so well said. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, go ahead, Arifa, and then I see there's someone in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I think I want to add a little for your first question. So maybe I want to share a little story. I'm right now I'm on my last semester in Social Welfare Universitas Pajajaran, and I think there are a huge difference between my first year and my last year in the university, because on my first year, many people do not know about social welfare major or social work major, and I remember it clearly that in my first year there are some news in Indonesia where a celebrity said that a social worker is someone who clean the street, like do the social work, not do a social work. And a lot of people, a lot of social worker mad about that, because we are a profession that recognized by the law. So I think the professor and the student do a quite good job to promote our major. And right now, many people knows about our major, and my hopes for the social work education, maybe we can do more like discussion about the issue targeting the marginalized community, especially in Indonesia. And for the second question, I hope that social worker in Indonesia are being recognized, because just like what I said before, even though we have the law of social worker in Indonesia, many people do not think social worker is an important profession, because they think what we do is just do social work. But in reality, we do a lot. We do much more than that. Like we help people, and we ensure that they get the basic rights. So my hope is that the image of social worker in Indonesia are being recognized, and maybe people will think that social worker is very important, is very vital in our society, just like how they see the doctor who help people who get sick physically. But social worker help, also social workers help people just like what other professions do. Thank you.
That's great. And I think your idea that the more people that actually learn about the profession and then come to school for it and enter the profession, you're becoming a larger and larger workforce in your country, which means you have more and more power, the more people that are actually joining your profession. And I think that's what the person in the chat also said, that social workers receive the recognition they deserve in a broader audience, so that society really understands what the role of social work is in promoting well-being, and that collectively you can build a more supportive community. That's very, I am so excited about the future possibilities for all of you in Indonesia as part of this profession. I think you're really poised to do some amazing things. Did anyone else want to speak about their vision or how they're changing? Yeah, go ahead. Is it Rachel or Rochelle?
Okay, hello, Miss Mary. My name is Rachel, and I would like to speak about my vision regarding the social work future in Indonesia. I think what I want the most in our field is like, for our future, I want to help contribute in eliminating poverty, because I think poverty is definitely one of the biggest problems that we have here in Indonesia, because as I see in social media, and like nowadays people use social media a lot, right? And especially like TikTok or Instagrams, and I see so many people like the poverty, the people who are like poor, and then they don't have like privilege access, and then they just like they don't have the same education that we have. Like they cannot go to university, or maybe just like a simple like elementary school or middle school. They don't have the access for it, and I think that is definitely one of the biggest concern that we have right now. And so I think that is definitely that I hope that in social worker profession that we can help in eliminating, because I think it is very sad and it's very concerning to see how many people that they just because they have like limited knowledge in their mind, and then how it's affecting the future generations as well, like because like the older generations, they have limited knowledge and access, so they cannot help educate the children, like the future generations. And I see so many in social medias how like they're trying to promote and not promote, but just like show their daily lives and how they actually act in the poverty, like in their, like when, because they are poor. And it's just like, it's very sad to see like the many young generations, like it's like they don't have a bright future because of the limited access. So I hope that in the social work field that we can like reach out more to those who are in the poverty, and then like we just, I think, yeah, like reach out and then educate them and just like help them in many ways possible, because I think those who are in poverty also want to like improve their lifestyle. I'm pretty sure they want to do that. And I, like as a practitioner, I can see that they are very cooperative as well, although they have sometimes have conservative mindset or like close-minded mindset. I think they are also willing to make a change in their life. I think that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One of the things that I enjoyed so much when I was in Indonesia and in Jatinangor was the students who were doing their field placements in the community, and they were helping groups of mothers with their economic development. So helping them build new businesses or helping them do the marketing for businesses. And the students would come and I would get to see some of the products that they were working with, small collectives of people from poorer communities around. And it was great. I mean, the number of projects were really astonishing, I think. And your energy and ideas, Rachel, are some of the things that help motivate communities where maybe they feel downtrodden by poverty. But someone like you comes along and really helps them build on their ideas and create new opportunities for economic development. So you are all spark plugs. I think of you as little spark plugs out there, shining lights in new places.
Thank you, Miss Mary.
Anyone else have a vision or how you're influencing your professors? How about before I end the slideshow, anyone have any questions for me about the things that I shared? Yes. Arifa. Arifa,
Okay.
is that how you say your name?
Yeah, it's Ariwa.
Arifa.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for your presentation. I have read a lot of journal about social work in United States, and it's really an honor for me to listen of your presentation. So I have two questions about your presentation and about social worker in the States. So my first question will be, what are the biggest challenges or obstacles in U.S. social work practice? And for my second question will be, how can the intersectionality be ensured in social work practice, especially when we are working with women, since women have a lot of differences, experience, and backgrounds. So how do we ensure to promote the intersectionality while conduct the practice? Thank you.
So just let me be sure I understand the second question. It's about intersectionalism with women?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, because they have many different identities and roles. Okay, so the biggest obstacles to social work practice in the United States are resources, resources, resources. So most social work is done in poorer communities or with people that have a high degree of need. And our country is very stingy with needy people. So we have a huge housing crisis in this country. We have very big lack of affordable housing for people. So once you fall into poverty, it becomes very difficult to even find a decent place to live that's affordable and then be able to work your way out. And if you can find an affordable place to live, it's usually some place where you can't get to your job, where you'd have to take 6 buses. So there are what I think of as contextual factors like housing, transportation, and education that really create barriers to our being able to be more effective in social work. And our country is just not moving on these issues. We have so much data. We know about them for the last 20 years, and yet getting our government and our communities to work together to try to resolve these is really, really difficult. And I'd say a lot of it has to do with wealth and money. You know, big landlords want to make a lot of money, and they say they put money into their buildings, but there's a lot of graft and corruption in our housing industry in our country, and it makes it much, much more difficult to help solve it. So social workers are out there on the front lines doing the work, but we run into a lot of resource barriers for families and communities. In terms of intersectionality with women, you know, for women in our country who are poor and single mothers, housing is a big issue, being in a community, but we also have a huge problem with violence in our country. So family violence is one of the biggest challenges that many women in our country have to deal with. And we speak about women's rights, but we really struggle to have equality. So again, if you're wealthy, or you can go to school, or you have education, you're able to navigate our culture in ways that give you opportunity. But if you're poor or Black or an immigrant, it's very hard to navigate those systems, which are, I want to say, rigged. They're rigged for, you know, people with money and a good education, and it becomes very hard to change your status. So the intersectional factors of race, culture, religion, education, and wealth all conspire in many ways to work against women, particularly poor women who have children. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it is really answer my question. Thank you so much for your explanation, Mary.
You're welcome.
I thought in a country like United States, resources wouldn't be an issue, but it turned out the same. And what about the data about the people? Are you concerned on the people in need, or to provide social justice to vulnerable population?
Yeah, I think social justice for vulnerable populations is really huge in this country. Because, you know, we have that utilitarian focus, the greatest good for the greatest number. And if you happen to be the weaker link, you know, a person with a disability, or a person from a group that's not the majority or the dominant culture, person that speaks another language, a person who's an immigrant, our social policies, our support systems see you as lesser than. You have to earn those things in our country, as opposed to their basic human rights, and everyone should have access to them.
Okay. Right. Thank you for the answer. Okay, Mia, I think you raised your hand.
Yes. Hi, Mary. I have a question. It is a little bit specific because I'm currently taking a course which is the American Immigrants Experience, and during that course I've heard a lot about DACA, or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival. So would like to ask, what are the best practices and challenges that are usually faced by child social workers when providing support and assistance to immigrant children who are part of the DACA program in the United States, and how can they navigate the complex legal and emotional issues related to this unique group? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Child Arrivals. They're also, oh, the name of it has gone out of my mind. Anyway, we have a group, it's about, I don't even know, 500,000 people now in this country that qualify under the DACA rules. They're not accepting any new applicants for this program that stopped during the Obama administration when he tried to get a permanent amnesty for them so that they would basically become US citizens. But our Congress has just been unable to get out of its own way to grant them citizenship. And even though the vast majority of them are working professionals, they've been here their whole life, this is the only country they've ever known, our conservative politicians do not want to welcome them as Americans. They pay taxes, there are teachers, there are nurses, there are doctors, there are lawyers, but our politicians don't want to grant them permanent residency status in this country. It's become such a political football. So how can social workers help them? I think because they've become like political pawns, they're in between all the politicians. Social workers can help them just try to maintain their own mental health. Really try to go to your job and not worry so much about what my future is going to hold. I think social workers can help them have stress reduction strategies, and also advocate, be part of the advocacy, writing letters to Congress, going to rallies in support of DACA applicants. So I think there's multiple levels that social workers can use to work in support of them. But right now, I don't see a path forward to citizenship in the near future, given the dysfunction that exists in our Congress. So it's really about advocacy and then being an ally with them and letting them know that there are many American citizens who believe strongly in their right to become full citizens in our country. That's a great question. I think I saw someone said a question has come in on YouTube.
Yes. Can you read the question? A question coming from Nurul Eka. She is a participant from YouTube, and she asks about social worker roles in response to violence against minority group,
Yeah.
especially.
Social workers have been hugely important in advocating and supporting LGBTQ plus people in our country, both at the policy level and legislative level, as well as at the advocacy and direct intervention level. That said, we have been very unsuccessful in overturning laws in some of our states. So some of our states now are banning transgender care for transgender youth. So this is an example of where the federal government has said there's equal rights for everyone, but individual states have actually passed laws that are extremely discriminatory against LGBTQ plus people. What I know is that social workers in places like Texas and Missouri and Arkansas, where these laws have been passed, are trying to run for office so they can overturn those laws, or advocating for more liberal people to be put into public office. They're also filing lawsuits. We're trying to use the courts to help overturn some of these. So social workers are hugely instrumental in being allies in the fight to protect the rights of LGBTQ plus people. But in some parts of our country, the practice is not social work practice, but the practice of our government and our citizens has been shameful. So thank you for that question, Noral.
Okay, thank you. I think she listened through YouTube. Bu Titi, you're raising your hand. Hello, Bu Titi. Otherwise, Mia is going to ask you another question, if she may.
Yes.
Okay, go Mia.
Okay, so my previous question was regarding the child immigrants, and I think this is a very interesting topic because, yeah. And I have another question, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard from one of my professors here, there's a lot of things that has been happening in the context of immigrants, especially how we have those shifts in the US presidential administrations, specifically from Obama to Trump and then to Biden. Then I've also heard how actually Obama has deported more immigrants than Trump. And yeah, how does that impacted the roles, responsibilities, and policies that social workers must navigate in providing support and services to vulnerable populations? And like, what is the huge difference between those three presidential administrations, and what lessons can be drawn from these changes to inform the future of social work practice in the United States? I'm sorry if it's a bit long, but thank you.
No, it's a great question. I think there have been different policies from the three different administrations, but what's happened now is that they've all been executive orders. They have basically bypassed Congress. And what we're seeing now is a Supreme Court that's saying that presidents have overstepped their authority and cannot make these executive orders related to immigration, that is the responsibility of Congress to make laws governing immigration in this country. And I think the presidents have done that out of frustration, because the last time we had immigration reform, federal immigration reform in this country, was under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. So Congress is basically not working. They're not doing their job. They can't agree. They can't bring any legislation forward. They can't even find a Speaker of the House. So presidents, out of frustration, have created these executive orders, but our country is governed on a balance between the three houses, between the executive, the Congress, and the courts. And the court is saying our actions on immigration are out of balance. And so nothing's going to happen in this country until Congress acts, except people are going to be turned away at the border. Now, our President Biden has set up a plan for people, so many people per day, to be allowed asylum. But that also is being challenged now in the courts. So we're in a real tug of war within our country about who has authority and responsibility to help solve the immigration problem in our country. It's very complex.
Interestingly, because in previous week, Sabrina talked about how politics will influence the practice of social work, especially in how the policies through politics will influence the social work practice, including the refugees that entering Germany. One of the questions was from asked about how the policy of accepting the refugees from Ukraine and it's actually the government of German is act differently between the Syria and with the Ukrainian refugees. So it's interesting how she put emphasis on doing politics, involved in the politics to influence the practice of social work in Germany.
Mhm. Thank you for making that connection.
Yes. Okay. We have two people raising their hands.
So Ismail,
Is your speaker on now?
you can unmute Ismail.
He chats. He writes something. He wrote something in the chat.
Oh,
Uh,
the speaker is broken.
Ibu Lia, can I ask question?
Yes, but Ismail is
Okay.
wrote something
All right.
on the chat. Maybe Ibu Mary can respond to Ismail first. Sorry, Bu Titi.
It's okay.
Oh, interesting. Ismail, that's a really great example of how, oh gosh, you just have made so many points for me in your question. Thank you so much. It really points out how policy informs practice and practice should inform policy, right? So the Chicago Housing Project are such a great example because along with trying to provide low-income housing for poor people, we also had real estate developers who used those housing projects to increase the value of property in other parts of the city. So we basically isolated people, poor people, in the worst neighborhoods, far away from transportation, making it very difficult for them to get to work and be employed. And we packed them into these high-rise buildings, and then they created huge communities of need all in one space, and all the jobs went elsewhere, out into the suburbs. And we basically said, fine, we'll just leave the inner city neighborhoods to die there with no economic development. So you are exactly right. The crime rate went up in Chicago. It kept skyrocketing. The projects were demolished. And this is an example of how time and time again, social workers working in those projects went back to the policymakers saying, we need a different plan for housing. And I think we've tried to implement that now. If you just pack people into 15-story buildings with no access to resources, they're going to fall apart. Those communities are going to fall apart. So how does social work then influence the policymakers and the funders to actually use what we're learning from these experiments? So if you in Indonesia can have a continuous cycle of practice in the community, research on that practice, and then really sharing the findings back, that would be great. You will build better practices that way through that research policy practice connection. So please learn from us and don't do it the same way.
I think some of the governments, especially in Jakarta, many people are being removed from some of the communities are being put in a housing project like this, and they're doing a demo, their protest because their housing is too far away from their work and their access to the transportation is too far. So those are the things that's also occurring in us, I think. So maybe we, Ismail, when you become a future leader, you have to rethink about that. So, because it's already happened now. Okay, thank you, Ibu Mary. Thank you, everyone. We are going near 11:15, and being mindful with your time, it's maybe too late for you.
But did TT have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would it be okay for you?
Yes.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead. Tuti.
Ya, saya akan bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Sorry Mary, I'm asking question in Indonesia, so maybe Bu Lia can explain to you. Karena di sini saya lihat ada 100 lebih peserta ya, yang mungkin ada juga yang mungkin ingin pertanyaannya mungkin sama dengan saya. Mudah-mudahan ini bisa tersampaikan. Jadi kalau saya melihat kita belajar banyak ya dari apa yang disampaikan Mary terkait pekerja sosial di Amerika. Dalam perkuliahan, dalam berbagai buku, mungkin kita merujuk the ideal practice of social worker mungkin terjadi di sana gitu ya. Ya memang terjadi di sana, tapi juga banyak tantangan. Nah, salah satu yang saya tangkap dari presentasi Mary adalah bagaimana kita membangun kapasitas pekerja sosial yang politically active gitu ya. Jadi yang bisa memang memperjuangkan punya empati, punya keberpihakan, punya militansi untuk memperjuangkan kelompok-kelompok yang mendapatkan ketidakadilan, kelompok-kelompok yang termarginalkan. Nah, mungkin Mary bisa berbagi kepada kita seperti apa keberpihakan itu atau sikap atau kompetensi tadi dibentuk melalui pendidikan. Karena bisa jadi kalau tidak kita terjebak pekerja sosial itu hanya melaksanakan tugas rutin aja, jadi menjadi agent of the state gitu ya, atau bahkan menjadi control agent dari sebuah negara atas warganya. Nah, ini yang saya pikir teman-teman, terutama mahasiswa, perlu memperhatikan aspek lain dari kompetensi pekerja sosial. Jadi bukan hanya melakukan intervensi, tetapi juga mungkin memiliki sikap, keterampilan, cara pandang yang memang memihak kepada kelompok-kelompok yang saya sebutkan tadi dan juga mampu untuk mengembangkan kapasitas itu. Itu kira-kira Bu Lia. Terima kasih. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Ibu Titi. You may translate it into English again.
Mary, is there any period of time in education system of social work in United States where the curriculum really focus on building the attitudes and skills for the students to really engage in a political activities to influence the policy making? Because what my concern is in many part of the words, social worker can be the control agent for the state, or they don't really take a side, to really protect the rights of the marginalized people or people in needs, and maybe we can learn from I don't know, some practice. We can learn from positive or negative experience that US have on that regard. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. That's a really good question. And yes, in our macro practice sequences in the United States, political practice is one of the sets of skills that is talked about as a role for social work. We have, I think, 5 members of Congress now who are MSWs, and many, many more at local and state levels. We also have course in legislative advocacy at the advanced MSW level. And in the undergraduate program, we prepare people for generalist practice, which would include practice in political offices. There's also an institute that's run out of the University of Connecticut. It's a summer institute, and it actually prepares people to run for office or lead political campaigns. It's the Nancy Humphreys Institute for Political Social Work. So anyone who would be interested in actually running for office can apply to and attend that institute through the University of Connecticut. There's a lot of support for social workers running for political office. We also have a National Political Action Committee, and every year they identify social workers running for office and try to provide the kind of financial support needed for that. So yes, both in macro practice, in advanced practice courses, in the administration section, and then also at the Nancy Humphrey Institute for Political Social Work. So I know it is getting late and I've kept you all for a long time, and I so appreciate your questions. I did just want to share a couple of slides to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you. These are pictures from UMPAD students from when I was there. Some wonderful meals we had together and some classroom activities. And this is one of my favorite pictures from a class that we had with your students. Are any of those of you in this class in any of these pictures? I think these were graduate students, and I think
Yes,
these all were undergraduate students.
maybe some of them have graduated from the program, or all of them, because it was
Okay.
quite a long time ago.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to say what a delight it is for me to have this opportunity to talk with all of you and to see some of my friends from when I was there. Rudy, it's very good to see you. And Sony, it's very good to see you as well.
Thank
So I want
you,
to thank you
Ibu Mary.
for the invitation.
You're welcome, and thank you as well for providing your time, especially it's a late time. And we really appreciate that your discussion with us, and we are really enjoying our conversation and our discussion today. And hopefully we can do this more specific to children and social work. That would be more enhancing for the students, especially when working with children. And I'm also the lecturer for the class, so it would be a good opportunity to invite you again in the future to join with our class. Once again, I think that's wrap up our session for today. Thank you for attending and for coming and for providing us with very useful insights and also a discussion. And the last, the question from Butiti is also, I think it brings up an idea of how we encourage our students to be active and be brave and able to actively participate in political actions. So thank you for those insights. And last but not least is closing. I will give Pak Sony an opportunity to say or to express his gratitude for today's session. Pak Sony, the screen and time is yours.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Nurlia Ciptarsari. Professor Mary, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And I think good night for USA.
That's actually tomorrow already.
Yeah, okay. Thank you,
Good
Professor
morning, then.
Mary.
Good early morning.
I want to closing statement in the moment. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, good afternoon in Indonesia, and good night for Professor Mary. Honorable Prof. Mary, and nice to meet you, Honorable Head to Social Welfare Department, Inahayati PhD, Honorable Head of Social Welfare Study Program, Dr. Udis Darwis, Honorable Head of the Center for Corporate Social Responsibility, Social Entrepreneurship, and Community Empowerment, Dr. Santoso Triraharjo, Honorable Lecturer in International Social Work, Dr. Nurliana Cipta Absari, Dr. Eva Nuriyah, and Sinas, and Lecturer of Social Welfare, Faculty of Social Political Science, Universitas Pajajaran, and lovely for student of Social Welfare, Visip Unpad. Introduce, my name is Soni Ahmad Nulakin, Professor Mary, representing the team of lecturer in International Social Work courses. Professor Mary, thank you for enlightening his knowledge about international social work, United States, covering core value, historical influences, pathway to practice, is it policy to practice or practice to policy, national framework for the profession, international perspective, future of the profession. Prof. Mary, this knowledge is very useful for us. Prof. Mary, do you remember in 2019, we meet at the Department of Social Welfare, Faculty of Social Political Science, Universitas Pajajaran, and had time to enjoy lunch together and currently meet online. I hope to meet again at Department of Social Welfare, Visip Unpad, Jatinangor Campus, and Bandung, West Java, Indonesia. Prof. Mary, I want sharing about core value social work in Indonesia. The core value of social work in Indonesia is based on the global social work value formulated by the International Federation of Social Workers, namely social justice, human rights, diversity. The foundation of Indonesian culture derived from religion and ethnic diversity. The foundation of the core value of social work comes from the religion and ethnic diversity of Indonesia, which is crystallized in the five foundations of Pancasila, namely the one of only God, just and civilized humanity, Indonesian unity, peoplehood led by wisdom in representative consultation, and social justice for Indonesian people. Population of Indonesia is 273 million people, with 86% Muslim, 10% Christian, 1% 71 Hindu, and 0.74 Buddhist. And Confucian and or the religion. More than 1,340 ethnic group in Indonesia. The Indonesian population is very religious and remained united. This is primed in unity in diversity, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Just a little sharing and hopefully useful for Prof. Mary. All participants for the visiting professor from Professor Mary, we would like to thank the support from the Dean and of the Faculty Social and Political Sciences UNPAD, Head of the Social Welfare Department, Head of Social Welfare Study Program, and Head of Study Center, International Social Work Course Team, Social Welfare Lecturer, and Social Welfare Student. The International Social Work Lecturer team will follow up on the inspiration of Professor Mary and Sabrina in the following activities. The first, provision of classroom material on social work practice in the field of education and social work policy Indonesia by lecturer. Two, second, study of contemporary issues of international social work with case Indonesia and other countries by studi comparative by student. And three, study of learning practice for international social work courses at Pajajaran University, social welfare in collaboration with University Indonesia and social welfare study program in Japan, the Philippines, and England by team lecture, collaborative with social welfare department with Dr. Ventini Nugroho dan Tatsuru Akimoto, Japan. Thank you for all participants. Selamat siang, good afternoon. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Rudi, Pak Soni, Pak Dr. Sani. Please, do you have any comment, Ibu Mary?
Just terima kasih.
Well done. Keprok gitu ya, tepuk tangan. Terima kasih, Bu Mary. Okay, last but not least, I will provide opportunity for Pak Rudi to present the certificate of appreciation for your today's lecture. Pak Rudi, the screen and time is yours.
Good, thank you, Ibu Lia. Sorry. Okay, hello, Prof. Mary. Nice to meet you again. First, I want to thank you so much that you have give opportunity to our student discuss about the how social work profession in United States. I think it will give a big opportunity for our student to develop how the profession of social work, social profession in Indonesia will be better and better in the future. And for this moment, I want to give you a certificate of appreciation. I think you yeah, it's just the little appreciation from us to you, and I surely hope that you will come to Unpad again for next time. I think.
Screen, Pak Rudi, sertifikatnya, sorry.
Oh ya, oke. Ada di siapa ya? Saya tidak. Mungkin ada yang bisa bantu.
Di bulan.
Okay.
Oke.
Okay.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay. This is from us. I hope it will be a little appreciation, but I think it's maybe in the next time we will come to your college to discuss more. And
Good idea.
Yeah, and maybe you have information that one of my student now join in international mobility that in Boston University. Putu ya, Putu kamu di Boston ya?
Iya, Mia di Boston tadi
Ya.
udah.
Oh, nama panggilannya Mia. Sorry. Okay. Maybe you will have opportunity to discuss with you more for his study there. I think it's for me, and I'm sorry I am in final examination for our student in thesis for their thesis. Okay, thank you, Prof. Mary. I hope we will see you again in next time. Thank you.
thank you so much. That's really beautiful.
I think we can send that through email to you too. So
Perfect.
you can have the copy of it. Yep.
I would love that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last but not least, photo session.
Foto bersama, foto session,
Yes.
foto session. Yeah.
Before we send you to your comfort bed.
Open kamera, dipersilakan untuk semua. Please, open kamera. Ya, oke.
Okay, Bulan, are you there?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so there are 115 participants in this room, so there will be 5 slides. I'm gonna take slide by slide. So the first slide, I'll count on 3, 2, 1. Okay, next slide. 3, 2, 1. Another one. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Again, 3, 2, 1. Last slide, please. 3, 2, 1. Okay, done.
Okay, thank you very much, Bulan. Ibu Mary, we will send you the certificate and also the photo for the documentation. And thank you again for today. I think that's wrap up our meeting for today for our session, International Social Work. Thank you very much, and I hope we learn a lot from today's session. I'll see you again for the students next week. For Ibu Mary, thank you very much. I hope you are not going to have a nightmare after this. And
No,
enjoy.
beautiful
yours.
dreams. I'm going to dream about all of you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's wrap up our meeting. I'll let you leave this Zoom and see you.